No one could tame the vicious dog until a little girl appeared. The reason behind it shocked everyone.
Hello everyone, enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
Deep within the dense pine forests of Santa Fe, more than 3 hours' drive from downtown Colorado, lay a stretch of land seemingly forgotten by time. On a large iron gate, warm white letters read, "The Sanctuary, a place of love for abandoned pets." The sign was decorated with drawings of dogs frolicking under the sun, with a slogan below, "Love heals all wounds." Outside, the grounds were neatly trimmed, with lavender blooming purple along the walkway. An old pickup truck came to a halt and a man stepped out. Mr. Michael, a pet food delivery worker. He glanced around, frowning at the uncanny silence. "Hello," he called loudly. "Anyone here? I've got the delivery as per the contract." No response. Mr. Michael set the crate down and was about to leave when the sound of footsteps echoed from within. A man in a white lab coat stepped out, bright-faced, slick-back hair, and a friendly smile. "Good morning, Mr. Michael," the man said in a gentle voice, like an obstetrician's. "I'm Stephen, in charge of the medical unit today. Mr. James is occupied." "Oh, sure. I'm just here to drop off the goods. But this place seems different somehow." Stephen smiled without answering. He signed the delivery slip and pushed the crate inside. The heavy door closed behind him with a thud. The howling wind outside was soon drowned out by a faint moan echoing from the inner corridor. In stark contrast to its outward appearance as a loving pet sanctuary, the inside of the sanctuary was a cold steel hell. 3 meters below ground, rows of small iron chambers barely 2 square meters each lined the basement. Each cage had a serial number, a monitoring screen, and a camera installed directly above. The air was thick with the stench of dried blood and antiseptic. Cage 27 still showing mild tremors, neurotransmission level at 89%, nearly ready for round 2, reported a female technician, Sarah, checking the data board. "Don't let it die before the drug trial," Stephen snapped. "Dog or not, if we lose another test subject, James will skin you alive." Sarah pressed her lips together, saying nothing. At the far end of the row was a massive Rottweiler, jet black, chest stained with blood. Metallic wires were attached directly into its skull, connected to a small device mounted in a control box on the wall. ID number, D00. Name, Rex. "Don't get close without the control unit," Sarah warned. "Last week, it killed another dog by biting clean through the bars." Rex lay still, eyes half closed. One ear drooped, scorched from a previous electric shock. Suddenly, a strange chime rang out from the ceiling speaker. Ting. "Rex. Begin memory stimulation test. Send electrical wave A3. A high-pitched screech rang out. Rex's entire body jerked violently. He let out a howl, not like a dog, but like a human screaming in the grip of a nightmare. On the screen, his vitals spiked and fluctuated chaotically. Sarah swallowed hard. "Oh God, they're triggering his memory of Clara again." "Seriously?" Stephen nodded. He muttered. "James is obsessed with it. He believes the dog remembers everything. And if it remembers, then it can reproduce it through technology." Sarah turned away, trembling. No one at the facility dared mention the name Clara too often. Clara Wilson, 21 years old, senior year vet student, came to the sanctuary 6 years ago full of idealism and a bright smile. Clara had raised Rex herself when he was just an abandoned pup. Among the hundreds of animals chipped and drug-tested, she secretly kept Rex untouched. She called him "my tough little guy" and used to pat his head every evening. "Don't be afraid, Rex. I'll get you out of here." But then Clara discovered the truth. The sanctuary wasn't rescuing animals, it was turning them into test subjects for illicit neurodrugs sold to black market labs and paramilitary groups. One day, Clara managed to steal a USB drive containing incriminating data. Hands trembling, she walked into James's office. You can't do this. They'll kill you, James. No, Clara, James closed the door. They'll kill you. Her scream was smothered by his hand. Rex, standing just outside the door, broke the lock and lunged. He sank his teeth into James's arm, knocking him down and drawing blood. But James managed to grab a taser and fired repeatedly. From that day forward, Rex was no longer Rex. He was dragged into the basement, fitted with a chip that linked directly to his brain stem, injected with memory-warping drugs, and forced to relive the same memory over and over, the moment his beloved Clara was strangled to death, then incinerated in a bio-waste furnace. James didn't dare kill the dog. He believed Rex's unusual brain structure had preserved the memory perfectly, a living hard drive. But at the same time, he feared it, like one fears a dormant rage. We don't need it to live too long, James had said the day before while reviewing the cage footage. Just long enough to extract that memory with wave conversion tech. Yes, sir, Stephen nodded. In the darkness, Rex howled again. The sound was not a bark, nor a growl, but something closer to a human cry, torn, desperate, unable to name its own pain. Night after night, that sound echoed from the basement, seeping through layers of concrete, twisting into the air like a soul imprisoned with no escape. Let us all thank Mr. James. No one in America loves animals more than he does. The TV host beamed brightly as the screen behind him showed a dignified middle-aged man with silvering hair and a calm smile standing next to a puppy. The banner read, Mr. James Morgan, Angel to Abandoned Pets. In a 5-star hotel suite in the heart of Aspen, James himself was watching that program. He lifted a glass of red wine and smirked. Idiots. A gentle knock came at the door. Without turning, he said. Come in. Stephen entered, carrying a folder. Your segment's trending on Twitter, sir. Today's donations have already topped $200,000. Well, James set his glass down and stretched. People will throw money at anything as long as there's a cute puppy and a smiling old man. Stephen hesitated. But, about the X-19 prototype? Last round killed 3 dogs in 8 hours. James walked around the desk, placed a finger on the back of Stephen's neck, and whispered. The death of 3 dogs just bought us 30 grand in donations. Do you think I care? Stephen fell silent, shivering. James was no ordinary veterinarian. Born into the Morgan family, owners of one of the largest biotech lab networks in the United States, he had studied at Harvard before moving to Colorado with a spotless resume. The media hailed him as the man who brought heart to science. But few knew that behind that title were notorious underground dealings, manufacturing neural control drugs, trading with armed groups, and conducting illegal experiments on live animals under a mask of charity. Do you still remember that girl? James asked, sitting back in his leather chair, eyes darkening. Stephen glanced up. Of course he knew he meant Clara. Yes, sir. She was an intern. Intern? James scoffed. A silly girl who thought compassion could save the world. He lit a cigar. White smoke curled up like a fading nightmare. She walked into my office that day, clutching that USB, trembling like she was about to cry. You're committing a crime, she said. Stephen kept his eyes down, silent. I gave her a chance. Stay quiet and I'd let her live. Maybe even send her to the US on a scholarship. But then she said something stupid, I'll expose everything. James stressed every word. He clenched the chair arm hard. And I couldn't let that happen. Stephen spoke softly. Sir, I still remember when Rex burst in. He nearly killed you. Yes. James looked at his right hand, where the scar still remained. I should have killed him. But then I realized, he's the key. He saw it all. He remembers. A dog that stores memory. Fascinating. He laughed, but it was a laugh that made Stephen's spine go cold. That's why I didn't have it terminated. With today's technology, we can retrieve brain signals and force memories to resurface. A dog can become a witness. And after that, we can erase, reprogram, and use them as combat units. But sir, Sarah, the woman in the white lab coat, stepped in. That dog, it's not the same. Every time we stimulate its memories, it howls until its throat tears. Its brain might already be permanently damaged. James shot her a side glance. Then turn that damage into a tool. Pain is the best catalyst for memory. Sarah fell silent. James moved toward the control panel, opening the live feed from the sanctuary. The camera showed Rex lying still, eyes clouded, his body twitching slightly to the rhythm of electric pulses sent into his brain. Rex, James whispered. You are the gateway to a world I am about to conquer. Sarah went pale. She didn't dare admit that every time she heard Rex howl in the night, she thought of Clara's eyes silent, pained, fading away right before them. Don't lecture me about ethics, James turned, his voice dropping. In war, whoever controls memory wins. Stephen bowed his head. Yes, sir. At that moment. Oh God. Over here, quick. There's something in the bushes. A forest ranger's voice rang out in the dense Taos wilderness. Two men in green uniforms rushed forward, flashlight beams slicing through damp leaves. A small dark figure trembled, curled up at the base of a pine tree, skin filthy, hair tangled into matted ropes like vines. One of the men gasped. It's a little girl. The girl growled when the light hit her face. Her eyes were cloudy, whites taking over the pupils, wild. Her hands were pressed to the ground, nails sharp as claws. She crawled backward like a terrified animal. No, no, don't scare her, the other ranger whispered, crouching down slowly. Hey there, sweetheart, we're not going to hurt you. The girl let out a chilling hiss, then tried to retreat further into the brush but a sharp branch snagged her arm. A thin trail of blood appeared. We need to get her to a hospital. She looks like she's been living in the woods for years. They wrapped a thin blanket around her frail body. The child didn't speak, didn't resist, but trembled all over, not from cold, but as if it were an ingrained survival reflex. At Taos Hospital, news of the feral girl spread like wildfire. The media dubbed her the savage child, the sole survivor of a wildfire 3 years ago that had killed her entire family. The hospital's chief physician, Dr. Richard Harris, formerly with Save the Children USA, took the case personally. The girl's parents were William and Lucy Taylor. Both died in the June wildfire. The child was missing until now, the head nurse reported. She's been living in the forest alone for 3 years. Richard raised an eyebrow. There's no sign of human contact. She doesn't speak, doesn't write, won't sleep on a bed, just curls up in the corner. He entered the hospital room. It was stark white. On the floor, a blanket had been curled into a nest. Inside sat Emma, the temporary name given in the file, motionless, wide-eyed, clutching her knees. Whenever anyone got close, she shrieked like an animal cornered. Emma? Richard asked gently. Can you hear me? No response. He sat down at a safe distance and placed a small stuffed puppy on the floor. Do you remember the smell of grass? Of burning wood? Or, the sound of barking? Emma's eyes moved. She looked at the stuffed dog for a second, then turned away. She hasn't eaten in 2 days, the head nurse whispered. Last night she howled for hours. It sounded like a wolf. Richard nodded. We can't use traditional therapy. We need to awaken her sense of safety, and her human instincts. A young doctor chimed in. I've read about animal-assisted therapy. Maybe placing her near dogs could trigger emotional memories. Good idea, Richard nodded thoughtfully. We're in contact with a canine therapy center in Aspen. Any place willing to take her in? James's phone rang. He answered. Morgan speaking. A woman's voice came through. Mr. James, the police just found a little girl in the Taos forest. She crawls on all fours, tangled hair, long claws. James narrowed his eyes. A wild animal. How old? About 7 or 8. She doesn't speak, but her eyes are strange. Strange? Not like a child's, more like a wild beast. Fierce. James paused for a few seconds, then asked. What about her parents? They died in a wildfire 3 years ago. She's believed to have survived alone in the forest since then. He let out a thin smile. Send her to the sanctuary. Tell the press it's a joint program for animal and child rehabilitation. They'll eat it up. But, are you sure, sir? I need a creature that hasn't been conditioned. If she can connect with Rex, we might unlock that dog's mind. Yes, sir. I'll make the arrangements. James hung up. He turned to Stephen. Rex is getting a gift. You're going to put the girl in the cage with him? No. I'll observe. If she can do what all these useless adults couldn't, we'll go further than any lab in the US. James turned on classical music. A piano melody drifted through the room. In his mind, a game had begun. At the hospital, the nurse said. There's the sanctuary. Mr. James's pet center. They just agreed. Richard frowned. The sanctuary? Good reputation, but a bit secretive. Mr. James said he'll cover all costs. Consider it a rescue gesture for a child in need. Fine. But monitor everything. I don't want Emma vanishing into some black hole. 2 days later, a white transport vehicle pulled up to the sanctuary's gate. Emma wasn't in hospital clothes, just a baggy gray hoodie. She was buckled in, eyes avoiding everyone. Beside her sat Mary, a 35-year-old social worker with softly curled brown hair and kind eyes. Emma, she said. Do you know this place will help you? Silence. You'll see dogs. Lots of them. You can brush them, or just watch them sleep. Still no response. Mary sighed. When the van stopped, the door opened, and a man in a white button-up shirt stepped out. It was Stephen. Welcome to the sanctuary, he said softly. This will be her temporary home. Mary nodded. I'm Mary Martin. This is Emma. Please remember she has severe psychological trauma. No forced interaction. No bright lights. And absolutely no sudden stimuli. Stephen smiled, his eyes scanning Emma like a scientist examining a specimen. Of course. We have a special area for her. Very quiet, full of trees, close to the puppy enclosures. Mary hesitated. I want regular check-ins. Of course, Stephen replied. We're always transparent. Inside, Emma was led down a long corridor. She didn't look at anyone, barely moved, only shivering now and then whenever a distant howl echoed from the kennels. They stopped in front of a small room with a glass door, a white bed, a wooden table, and a window overlooking the backyard garden. This is your room, Stephen said. You can do whatever you like here. Emma stepped inside. She didn't speak, didn't ask questions. She slowly walked to the corner of the room, knelt down, and curled into a ball with her face pressed against the wall. Mary's heart ached at the sight. She's unlike any child I've ever met, she whispered to Stephen. But those eyes, they're not the eyes of someone insane. They're the eyes of someone who has seen something horrific. Stephen smiled faintly. Maybe so. The first night at the sanctuary. The wind howled outside the sanctuary like lost souls trying to find their way back. Rain pounded the tin roof, creating heavy, rhythmic thuds. Deep within the dark compound, a small figure walked down a damp hallway. Emma. She was barefoot. Cold rainwater seeped between her toes, but she didn't flinch. She walked as if drawn toward an invisible point, eyes locked on the end of the corridor where the restricted zone's red warning lights blinked. The steel door marked "Danger to Life, Restricted Area" slid open. A metallic click echoed from the electronic lock. Emma didn't enter a code. The system had remained unlocked since she'd stood silently in front of it earlier that day, eyes blinking in rhythm with the lights as if unconsciously learning the code sequence. Inside, the room was pitch black, illuminated only by the dim glow of biomonitor screens and brainwave indicators. The air was icy and saturated with the smell of disinfectant and dried blood. The last cage, was it? Rex. The massive Rottweiler lay still in cage D00. A metal device the size of a fist was clamped to its head, wires feeding into a wall-mounted processor. A monitor displayed erratic brainwaves, sharp spikes, then flat lines, like a fading heartbeat. Electrical wires hissed with each neural shock delivered. Emma stood still. Unblinking. Unshaken. Her eyes met Rex's. In a strange moment, the beast raised its head. It didn't bark. Didn't growl. Its eyes were bloodshot, cloudy like those of someone suffering a mental breakdown. But the gaze shifted when it locked onto Emma's figure. The mute child. Her black eyes were deep and silent, like a cracked old mirror reflecting the same pain it had known. No one spoke. They stared at each other in the darkness. Neither moved. No sound. Just two beings, one human, one animal, both hollowed of their humanity, now facing each other like two broken pieces finally fitting together. Wind hissed through the wall cracks, blending with Rex's low growl like the mournful cry of a cursed soul. In the control room above, an alarm began to softly chime. Stephen frowned, seeing the restricted zone's lights blinking. "Is someone in there?" he asked. Sarah quickly activated the surveillance feed. The monitor showed Emma standing directly in front of Rex's cage. "Oh my God! It's the girl! How did she even get in there?" "No!" Stephen shouted. "If she gets attacked, James will kill all of us. Shut the cage lock now!" Sarah screamed. "We can't. Touching the system now will trigger a reverse pulse. It could send Rex into a frenzy." "What do we do?" Stephen bolted from the control room, yelling into his radio. "All staff, emergency. Report to restricted zone. Non-lethal weapons only." In the kennel, Rex began to growl softly. One side of his mouth curled, revealing yellowed fangs. His body tensed like a drawn bow. Emma didn't retreat. She lowered her head, sat down, and slowly reached out her hand, palm up. No words. No sudden movements. Just an open gesture. Rex growled low. His eyes still burned red. A pulse ran through the system. His body jerked. But he didn't howl. Instead, he sniffed. The sound of rain outside mixed with the thunderous rumble from deep inside the beast's chest. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Suddenly, Rex lowered his head. He slowly stepped forward 3 times, then lay down flat on the steel floor in front of Emma. The camera captured it all. Sarah's mouth fell open. "No way." Stephen stood frozen, voice shaking. It bowed to the girl. Emma looked at him. In her eyes, there was no victory, no surprise. Only something ancient, as if she'd always known. She gently lowered her head in return like a wolf pup greeting its mother. Then, without warning, Emma placed her hand on Rex's head. No electric shock. No aggressive reaction. Just a deep exhale from the animal's chest as if, for the first time in years, it was allowed to let go. Emma whispered not with words, but with a breath full of feeling. "I lost my freedom too." And in that moment, they seemed to understand each other. Footsteps thundered down the corridor. Stephen and 4 guards burst in, carrying stun guns and riot shields. Step back. The girl is in danger. No. Sarah shouted. Stop. Look. Everyone froze as they saw Emma, resting her forehead against Rex's, like 2 wounded souls sharing warmth. Stephen lowered his weapon, face pale. This isn't protocol. This is an anomaly. The door behind them burst open again. James appeared, walking quickly, leather shoes splashing on the rain-slicked floor, his face hardened like steel. What the hell is going on here? He barked. Stephen snapped to attention. Sir, the girl entered the restricted zone. Anne. Rex submitted to her. No. That's impossible. James growled each word, storming toward the cage. He saw Emma still seated next to Rex, her hand resting lightly on the beast's neck. Get her out of there now, he roared. Erase the camera footage. Lock everything down. Sarah spoke up. Mr. James, please why? Did you hear me? Lock it down. And isolate that girl, she is not TOC Rex again. Stephen hesitated. Now, damn it. 2 guards rushed in and grabbed Emma. Rex let out a deafening roar and tried to lunge, but the device on his head lit up red, sending a shock through his body that slammed him to the ground. Blood trickled from his mouth. Emma was dragged away, her small hand still reaching for the beast. No. Sarah screamed. They've bonded. Don't separate them. James stepped up and slapped her hard across the face. Shut up. From this moment on, that girl is a threat. Lock her in the basement. No contact. No cooked food. No light. Stephen swallowed hard. Sir, she's just a child. James leaned in close, voice low and cold. All the more reason to control her. If she can unlock the animal soul, she can also transmit memories. And I do not want those memories leaking out. Are we clear? Stephen couldn't answer. Emma was bound and dragged down a dark hallway. She didn't scream. Didn't resist. She looked back just once at Rex, collapsed on the steel floor, blood pooling around his head. Her eyes were lifeless, but deep inside, something was rising. Not rage. Not fear. But awakening. Emma was dragged like a wild animal through the moldy hallway. Her hands were shackled behind her back with iron chains, scraping against the freezing concrete, leaving trails of blood. Her small face pressed against the floor, eyes open and unblinking like stone. Careful. The kid might bite, one guard shouted. Bite your own damn hand. She's been like a statue ever since we pulled her from the dog, the other replied, voice shaking. Behind them, Sarah chased after, soaked in sweat. Wait. Please wait. Let me speak to Mr. James. Please, stop. Direct orders. Basement, the guard snapped, kicking open a steel door. They threw Emma into a pitch-black room with concrete walls, no windows, just a single flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling like it was ready to burst. Clang. The iron door slammed shut. The scraping sound of the bolt echoed like a coffin sealing shut. In the control room, James leaned on the desk, eyes fixed on the monitor. On it, Emma lay motionless in the corner, her back soaked in blood. Sarah burst in, gasping for breath. You can't do this. She's just a child. James turned to her, his voice icy. A child who just made the most dangerous dog in the facility submit. You call that just a child? Because she understands. Because she's like that animal, they're both broken. Exactly, he growled. And broken so deeply they've surpassed biological limits. From now on, she's no longer a child. She's a subject carrying the seed of high-level neural connection. What are you going to do to her? Sarah asked, her voice hoarse. James crossed his arms, speaking slowly. Starting today, the girl will be completely isolated from all animals. No light. No interaction. Only raw food to slowly strip away social consciousness. You're turning her into an animal. No. I'm turning her into a tool. Sarah stumbled back, mouth agape. You're insane. James stepped forward, his gaze glacial. I'm a scientist. Not a priest. In the basement, Emma lay motionless. A small slot under the door slid open, pushing in a tray, 2 chunks of raw meat bright red, streaked with blood and sinew. She stared at it, unblinking. The ceiling camera slowly panned, capturing every movement. Stephen's voice echoed through the speaker, monotone. Eat. Or you'll starve to death. No reaction. There's no one coming to save you. Rex is about to have his memories wiped. He won't remember you. He'll attack anything he sees. Silence. You think you're special? You're not. You're just a variant. A hybrid of human and feral. You'll be exploited like everything else. Emma slowly turned her head. Her eyes no longer vacant but burning with hatred. Stephen hesitated. He didn't know why, but he feared that look. That night, Sarah snuck into the control room, searching for the footage of Emma and Rex. But the data had already been erased. Too late, Stephen's voice came from behind her, low. I warned you. You're just going to keep ignoring this. Sarah snapped. That girl needs to be saved. James doesn't spare anyone who goes against him, Stephen whispered. But if there's a way for her to escape, I won't stop it. Sarah looked up. What are you saying? Tomorrow night. The basement system will reset to upload new drug protocols. During that time, the door locks will open for 120 seconds. The next morning, James walked into the control room, holding a cup of coffee, yawning. How's Rex? He asked. We've increased his electric dosage. The brain is starting to show temporary shrinkage, Stephen replied. Good. And the girl? Hasn't eaten. Still alive. Perfect, James smirked. Tonight we'll inject her with sample T02. The same drug that makes dogs tear their own skin off. If she survives, we'll prove a feral mind can endure better than a purebred human brain. Sarah's face went pale. You're going to use that? She whispered. Not going to absolutely, James said sharply. Greatness isn't for the weak. Night. Basement. Emma was bound, her arms strapped to a steel frame in the center of the room. A blinding light shone in her face, burning her eyes. James entered with 2 technicians in hazmat suits. Prep the injection, he ordered. Stephen stood silently outside. Sarah was there too, fists clenched, lips trembling. She's going to die, she whispered. Not if she's as strong as I think, James chuckled. The needle pierced Emma's arm. She jerked violently. Her body convulsed. Blood poured from her mouth. Her eyes rolled white. Her limbs shook like a rag doll struck by lightning. James stood in front of her, staring into her face. How does it feel? Does it hurt? No response. Nothing to say. Thought you were special. Still silence. James raised his hand and slapped Emma across the face. Answer me. Sarah broke into sobs. At that moment, a low, rumbling sound echoed from far away. Jarr. The monitors flashed red. Rex was howling from the end cage. But it wasn't a normal howl, it sounded like a human screaming inside a firestorm. Sarah gasped in horror. No way. Stephen shouted. Voltages off the charts. His brain's having a rebound reaction. James screamed. Shut it down. Kill the power. The technician was too late. The chip on Rex's head sparked, then, popped with a small explosion. The wall-mounted controller burst into sparks. On the camera, Rex jolted upright then stood. Blood seeped from both eyes. But he didn't collapse. He didn't howl. He just growled. Then broke out of his cage. The screech of bending metal rang through the compound. Stephen yelled. Basement doors. Now. James went pale. But it was too late. Rex was free. Alarms wailed across the sanctuary. Red lights pulsed through the corridors like a seizure. Sirens screamed like souls crying in torment. Sarah ran into the control room, face drained of all color. The dog. He's out. Stephen stood frozen, eyes glued to the static-filled monitor. I know. You knew and did nothing. Sarah shouted. He's heading to the basement. I didn't think he'd survive this long, Stephen mumbled, almost to himself. He's been tortured for 5 years, injected with hundreds of trial drugs. His brain should have been destroyed. But it wasn't, Sarah hissed through clenched teeth. He's still alive, because he remembers. Basement, torture chamber. Emma was still suspended, her body shaking in waves of spasms. The needle still dripped green neurotoxin, a glittering liquid that looked like emerald but destroyed nerves fiber by fiber. James took a step back, eyes never leaving the girl. Look, he said to Stephen, who'd just entered behind him. She's not dead. Her eyes are still moving. You're going to continue? Stephen asked, his voice thick. This is the crucial moment. Her mind is fracturing. If we can unlock her memory, we can record it. What about Rex? Doesn't matter. He can't escape the lower level. The doors are steel biometric locks. Right then, boom. The floor shook violently. James froze. What was that? Stephen quickly glanced at the secondary monitor. One of the basement cameras had shattered, its view now smeared with blood. No way, he whispered. He's ramming through every door. James barked. Lock everything. Send guards to the basement. Sarah burst in, face panicked. He won't stop. He's using his own blood to short out the electrical systems. James roared. Nonsense. He's a dog. An animal. I cut the control lines from his brain, I burned every memory. No, Sarah cut him off, her voice shaking. You can't burn the memory of someone who loved you. James grabbed the stun gun from the control desk and stormed toward Emma. Then I'll erase the last memory it has with this injection. Stephen's eyes widened in horror. What are you doing? A neural eraser. T-null. One shot and she won't remember who she is. She won't even know what pain means. No. Sarah blocked him. You'll be killing the last part of her soul. James shoved her hard to the floor. You think I give a damn about souls? Boom. A deafening explosion thundered from the hallway. The ceiling lights flickered violently, a few bursting with sparks. The entire basement shook. Sarah sat up abruptly. That was door 4. Rex has already broken through 3 security levels. Stephen whispered like he was in a trance. The dog, it's coming for the girl. James's hand trembled. He clutched the syringe tightly, stepping toward Emma. No. I won't let it reach you. You won't have anything left to remember. He pulled off the cap. Just as the needle was about to pierce Emma's neck, a chilling creak echoed. The basement door burst open. From the shadows, Rex emerged. He no longer looked like a dog. Fur bristled in clumps, chest soaked in blood, eyes glowing like clotted fire. One ear was torn. The metal remains of his neural implant dangled loosely from his skull. But he stood tall, step by step, slow and unshaken, like a machine of vengeance risen from hell. "Kill it!" James screamed, pointing the taser at Rex. Stephen panicked. "No. If you shock him now, the surge will trigger his brain one last time. He'll go feral." "I don't care." James pulled the trigger. Zap! Electricity shot straight into Rex's body. The beast convulsed for a second, then raised its head, and roared. A sound like 1,000 souls howling at once, like a volcano erupting from the throat of something swallowed whole by darkness. James backed away. "No, no." Rex charged. "Emma! Get down!" Sarah screamed. The girl was still suspended, but for the first time, a single tear fell from her eye. Rex leapt past Stephen, slamming into the iron rack. Steel cracked. The syringe fell from James's hand and shattered on the floor. "Back off! Back off!" Stephen yelled, pushing James backward. Too late. Rex knocked over the steel frame and roared again. A foul, metallic stench rose from his breath. He lunged at James. James fired wildly. Bang! One bullet hit Sarah's shoulder. Bang! Another grazed Stephen's ear. Bang! No more time. Crash! Rex tackled James, jaws locking around his throat. A sickening crack. Blood sprayed across the ceiling. The scream died mid-throat. James writhed, flailing arms, eyes bulging. But nothing could resist the force of the Rottweiler's vengeance. One final tug. His neck snapped. Sarah crawled toward Emma, blood pouring from her shoulder. "The girl, she's alive," she whispered. Stephen collapsed to his knees, murmuring, "Oh God, oh God." Rex panted. He turned, slowly walked to Emma, and gently licked her hand. Emma let out a faint gasp. Her lips moved but no words came. The ceiling lights flickered one last time, then died. Darkness swallowed the room. Smoke curled from the scorched control panel on the wall. The entire basement glowed red in the flickering pulse of emergency lights. The air was thick, suffocating, a mix of blood, chemicals, and scorched flesh. Rex stood at the center of the ruined chamber. His muzzle was soaked in blood, every breath a snarling wheeze full of agony. On the floor, James's body lay limp, throat torn out, eyes wide in disbelief, mouth frozen open in the shock of his own fate. Emma was still bound by one arm. Sarah, shoulder bleeding, struggled to lift her down from the iron rack. "Hold on, just a little more," she whispered, her voice breaking. Stephen approached, face pale, hands trembling as he worked the lock. "I'll get it off, okay, don't move." "Careful." Sarah cried. "The third latch is rusted if you pull." Snap. The metal cracked. Emma collapsed to the ground, her body curling in pain. Sarah dropped to her knees and cradled the girl. "Emma, listen to me, you're safe now. Do you hear me?" Emma opened her eyes, slowly. Her lips were cracked, a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. I'm okay." It was the second time she had spoken since being found. Stephen whispered. "She just spoke, she spoke." But before they could rejoice, a guttural sound echoed. Rex collapsed onto one knee. A thick stream of black blood poured from his chest. "Oh God," Sarah sobbed. "He's been shot." When James fired wildly, one hit his chest. Stephen stepped back, horrified. "We have to stop the bleeding." "I won't let him die," Sarah growled. "Not after everything he's done." Rex dragged himself toward Emma, his cold, wet nose pressing into her palm. Emma raised her hand and gently touched his head. In that moment, he was no longer a monster. No longer an experiment. Just a living being, searching for a place to die. Next to the only soul who still cared. Footsteps thundered down the hall outside. The response team is here. Sarah shouted. Quick! We have to get Emma and Rex out of here. Stephen panicked. They'll kill everyone. They don't care who's innocent. Then we try one last time. Sarah snapped, pulling the emergency lever on the back wall. North exit from the basement. Clang! A steel door burst open behind the lab, revealing a narrow passage leading to an old warehouse behind the facility. Sarah hoisted Emma onto her back. Rex, she called. Come on. We have to go. Rex staggered after them, each step leaving a long trail of blood. Stephen looked at James's body, then at Sarah. We have to take the data. Otherwise no one will believe us. Sarah nodded. She pulled a small USB drive from James's lab coat pocket, the one he always kept on him, containing all the experiment logs, the torture footage, even the final moments of Clara. They ran like hell through the north hallway. Flashlight beams pierced the air from up ahead. Tactical unit. Do not move. Bang! Bang! 2 warning shots rang out. Sarah screamed. Stop! We're not a threat. We have a child and a wounded dog. A soldier shouted back. Step back or we'll fire. Stephen raised his hands. We have proof. This USB. Everything James did is on here. A commanding officer stepped forward, gun aimed at Rex. If that dog moves one more step, I will shoot. Rex froze. He looked at Emma, then lay down, right in the path of the exit, panting heavily, legs trembling. Emma's voice came soft as wind. Don't shoot. The officer raised an eyebrow. It's an illegal test subject. It could be dangerous. No, Sarah shook her head. It's evidence. It's the only living witness to Clara Wilson's murder. Stephen stepped forward, offering the USB. You want to know what James did? Watch this. The officer took the USB, eyes skeptical. Get them to medical. Now. The dog goes to forensics but it stays alive. Understood? Yes, sir. Minutes later, Emma was lifted onto a stretcher and into an ambulance. She lay still, her head resting against Sarah's chest. Sarah held her tight. You saved everyone, you know that. Emma didn't respond. She looked through the window, where Rex was being loaded onto another stretcher, bloodied but still holding his head high. Her lips moved one last time before the door closed. Did we escape? Sarah bowed her head, tears falling freely. No, but we're alive. The door shut. Behind them, black smoke began rising from the ruins of the basement. The sanctuary, once a so-called heaven for pets, was collapsing. As the ambulance pulled away, Sarah glanced down at the girl once more. Emma, she whispered, do you know why Rex tore James apart? Emma turned her head very slowly. Her eyes carried 3 years of darkness. Because he killed his mother. Sarah froze. You remember everything? Emma gave a small nod. Clara. Her name was Clara. And I remember the way she looked at me when I was little. I remember her hand stroking Rex's back. I remember her singing whenever it rained. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. But, who are you? Emma closed her eyes. I'm the child Clara once saved. Before she was killed, she hid me in the forest. That was the last time I ever saw the light. Sarah had no words. The ambulance sped through the night. Behind them, the ruins of the sanctuary were turning to ash. Dawn hadn't broken fully, but the bright orange glow of morning had already begun to filter through the glass panes of Santa Fe General Hospital. The early breeze carried a hint of chill, but it couldn't compare to the haunting shiver left behind from the night of hell at the sanctuary. In Emergency Room 3, a line of doctors surrounded the hospital bed. Emma lay unconscious, her body wrapped in white bandages, her face covered with fading bruises. "She still has a pulse, stable blood pressure, but the heart rate is low," said Chief Physician Dr. Alexander Carter, flipping through a thick medical chart. "Any signs of waking?" a nurse asked. "Unclear. But the brain is still responding to sound. She just needs time." In the corner of the room, Sarah sat slouched in a chair, her lab coat stained with dried blood, her shoulder bandaged, and her eyes red from exhaustion. Beside her, Stephen sat with his head down, still clutching the USB that held the experimental data they had risked everything to save. A nurse entered quietly. "Doctor. Chief of Police Thomas Wilson is here. He's waiting outside." Alexander nodded. "Let him in." The door opened. A man in his 50s entered, wearing a crisp uniform and bearing a solemn face. "Thomas Wilson, father of Clara Wilson." Sarah stood up instantly. "Chief Wilson. I don't know what to say." Thomas looked at her. His expression was not angry, but weighed down by grief. "You're Sarah?" "Yes. I'm the one who witnessed Clara's death. I couldn't save her." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped toward Emma's bed, staring down at the girl for a long moment. "And this is Emma," Sarah replied, voice trembling. "A girl abandoned in the forest. But, she saved Rex, Clara's dog. And because of that, your daughter has finally been vindicated." Thomas placed a gentle hand on Emma's forehead, whispering, "Thank you, for holding on to a part of my daughter's memory." At the Santa Fe Police Department, the press had swarmed the area. Major news outlets like CNN, the New York Times, and NPR were all present. Inside the press conference room, Chief Thomas Wilson stood before a row of microphones, a file resting beneath his hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice firm and clear, "today we are releasing the official findings regarding the facility known as the Sanctuary, which was long promoted as a haven for abandoned pets." The room went dead silent. After conducting a full investigation, extracting data from the destroyed control system and reviewing the USB files, we discovered over 346 videos and 92 illegal experiment logs. He held up a photo. "Among them is footage of my daughter, Clara Wilson, being drugged, threatened, and ultimately murdered, by James Morgan, the director of the sanctuary." A reporter stood up abruptly. "Do you have direct evidence?" Thomas nodded, his voice cracking. "High-resolution video. With audio." Clara begged James to stop, but he killed her with his own hands. Then ordered her body incinerated in the facility's biodisposal system. Murmurs of shock and fury filled the room. A female reporter whispered. "But, the media always called him the angel of abandoned pets." "Yes," Thomas nodded. "An angel with wings straight from hell." He held up another photo of the Rottweiler, ID D00. "This is Rex, Clara's dog. He was tortured for 5 years, injected with experimental drugs, implanted with a control chip. But he is the only living being who retained Clara's final memories." Another reporter asked. "Is the dog still alive?" "Yes," Thomas replied, eyes bright. "He saved Emma, the only human who could connect with him. And I swear, he will not be euthanized. I've ordered that he be placed in the Biological Witness Protection Program." Applause erupted in the room. "What about the others involved?" another journalist asked. "Stephen? Sarah?" Thomas looked down at the front row, where Sarah and Stephen sat. He nodded. "They risked everything to defy James. They will not face prosecution. In fact, the government is considering awarding them the Presidential Citizens Medal. Sarah turned to Stephen and whispered. We really made it. Stephen truly smiled for the first time in years. Not just survived, we were reborn. At the veterinary unit of Santa Fe Hospital, in a special isolation room. Rex lay on a stainless steel table, 4 lines running into both sides, heart monitor beeping steadily. A thick bandage still wrapped around the wound where the bullet pierced his chest. The door opened. Thomas Wilson entered alongside Dr. Elizabeth Mitchell, head of behavioral veterinary medicine. Sir, Elizabeth said softly. He's recovering. But something strange. Thomas raised an eyebrow. What is it? He won't let anyone touch him. Except for Emma. Not even you. Not even me, Elizabeth sighed. But, when Emma enters the room, his heart rate immediately stabilizes. He lets her sit beside him for hours. No reaction at all. Thomas looked at the beast resting calmly. In those blood-red eyes, was something unmistakably human. They share a bond science can't explain, he said quietly. Elizabeth nodded. It's not control. It's empathy. Thomas exhaled, then said. Starting next week, I want Rex and Emma treated together. No cages. No restraints. No more drugs. Elizabeth smiled. For the first time, we're treating a living piece of evidence, like a living being. Thomas nodded slightly. Because he did what no one else dared, what my daughter never got the chance to finish. That night, in the special care unit, Emma lay silently beside Rex. Her head rested on the sleeping dog's back. Outside the window, a breeze whispered past, carrying the scent of lavender from the hospital garden. Sarah stepped in quietly, standing there for a moment. You doing okay? She asked. Emma gave a slight nod. I brought you something. Sarah held out a green dog collar, engraved with one word, Clara. This was the collar Clara gave Rex. When he was little, he was terrified of thunder. Every time it rained, Clara would hold him and say, "Don't be afraid. You have a name now. Having a name means someone's waiting for you to come home." Emma took the collar, her eyes welling with tears. I'll put it back on him now. Sarah smiled. Yes. Because from now on, he's not nameless. He's family. 1 week later. On national television, the anchor paused for a few seconds before continuing. Across the United States, shock still lingers after the horrifying revelations about the sanctuary, once hailed as a model of humane care exposed as a hellish lab for animal experimentation. Investigations and exclusive reports continue to emerge. And the most important witness is a girl who once couldn't speak. In the Santa Fe Animal Therapy Center, that morning was different. Emma wore a white sweater, her hair neatly cut short, her face clean but still bearing faint bruises on her wrists. She sat quietly in the courtyard, gently brushing the fur of a small puppy in her lap. Sarah approached, holding 2 cups of warm milk. You're up early, she smiled. Emma didn't turn. She just gave a quiet nod. I brought milk. 1 for you. And 1 for Rex. At the sound of the name, Emma looked up. After his last surgery, Rex's heart is stabilizing, Sarah said gently. The doctors said they'll take the bandages off his left leg today. Emma bent down again, continuing to brush the puppy's fur. Her voice was as light as the breeze. Rex doesn't like bright lights. Last time someone shined one in his face, he flinched. Sarah sat down beside her and handed her the cup. You really remember everything now? Emma nodded. There were times. I thought I was a dog. Because I didn't speak. I didn't stand upright. I didn't sleep in a bed. You're not a dog, Sarah said, her eyes moist. You're a person, a very brave little girl. I don't want to be brave. I just want to live without being afraid. That afternoon, in the general therapy room, Dr. Elizabeth Mitchell was checking Rex's wound. Good boy, don't move too much. I'm just going to remove the bandages, she said, gently peeling away each layer of gauze while softly petting the dog's belly. Rex lay still, breathing softly. Elizabeth glanced at Sarah. Will Emma be here for the bandage removal? She asked me about it yesterday. She's coming, Sarah replied. She insisted. The door opened. Emma walked in, holding an old stuffed animal, the first gift Sarah gave her when she arrived at the hospital. I brought this for him to hold when he sleeps. Elizabeth smiled. I think he'll like that. Emma stepped closer and saw the now dry wound. Can I touch it? Elizabeth nodded. Just gently. Emma softly placed her hand on Rex's belly. The dog opened his eyes for a moment and looked at her. That look, Sarah thought, was something holier than words. That night, under the high moon, Emma asked to go outside to the garden. Sarah looked surprised. Aren't you afraid of the dark? No, Emma replied. I lived in the woods for 3 years. But I've never seen the moon this beautiful. They sat on a wooden bench next to the lavender. The night air was cool and calm. Sarah asked softly. What do you think about everything that's happened? Emma was silent for a long while. Then she said. I lost my voice when I saw Clara being killed. After that, I lost my memory too. But now you can speak again. Because someone is listening now. 3 days later, at the Santa Fe County Courthouse, a special hearing was held. Chief Judge Ryan Hughes opened the session. Today, we are reviewing the formal charges surrounding the crimes committed by James Morgan. Although he is deceased, the case involving nearly 400 animals, 3 missing interns, and 21 silenced employees will proceed in full. He turned to Sarah and Stephen, seated in the front row. Miss Sarah, Mr. Stephen, would you like to address the court? Sarah stood up, holding a photo of Clara. I just want to say one thing, Clara did not die in vain. She once said, the truth always finds the light. Today, I believe she was right. Stephen stood slowly. I used to be one of James's men. I thought I was serving science. But after seeing a dog, tortured for 5 years, still protect a child with its last breath, I realized James never understood love. Because he never knew how to feel it. 1 week after the trial, the Santa Fe Hospital held a small ceremony in the garden. No reporters. No politicians. Only survivors. Emma wore a white dress, holding Rex's leash. He no longer needed the leg brace. Sarah stood beside her, holding a newly printed photo, Clara, age 21, smiling as she hugged Rex when he was still a puppy. Chief Thomas Wilson approached. Do you think she can see us? Emma asked. Thomas nodded, voice tight. She can. And she's proud of you. Emma raised her hand in a salute for the first time. Thomas smiled, eyes brimming. And her father is proud too. That evening, in the hospital backyard, Sarah told Emma a bedtime story. Once upon a time, she whispered, there was a little wolf who lost its pack. It wandered through snow, through forests, through hell. One day, it found a small bird with a broken wing. Neither could speak. Neither could fly. Neither could howl. But they knew how to stay beside each other. What happened next? Emma asked, her eyes sleepy. One day, they grew up. No longer a wolf pup or a baby bird. But creatures brave enough to love in a world full of darkness. Emma smiled, eyes closing. And the little mute girl learned to speak. Sarah stroked her hair, whispering. Yes. Because now, someone listens. Rex lay beside them, head resting on Emma's legs, eyes half shut. Wind rustled the trees. That night, there were no howls of pain. Only, steady breathing. From two souls who had walked out of hell together. The story of Emma and Rex reminds us that cruelty can wear the mask of charity. But truth cannot stay buried forever. Even tortured, forgotten, and voiceless, the soul of love can survive in silence, waiting to be awakened. A mute girl and a broken dog did what most grown adults would not dare. They faced hell. And walked through it. Because genuine love, however fragile, remains the strongest force to resurrect hope.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.